Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to more Toronto Raptors news. Ryker, I'm going to play the animation right before we dive into it because there's a lot of stuff we got to break down. Ryker, this is not only just a news update. We've had some WOJ bombs, some WOJ nukes come in. We had a WOJ, I wouldn't call it a bomb, I'd call it a splash, a water balloon. I was going to call it a splash balloon, a water balloon last night while we were on the podcast. But we've had some big ones today, and one of them was that the LAKERS are now in the running for Kyle Lowry. What are your initial thoughts to this? Because that raised a lot of question marks in my head when I heard that.
And everybody is acquainted with the Walmart hat. We also have the Walmart t-shirt, which I'm breaking out. I'm giving it to Woj for 2 days in a row because, dude, this is the most ridiculous. You know what it is? There must not be enough interest. There must not be enough hype around the NBA for trade deadline, and they just need to drag the biggest market into the mix because Kyle Lowry's reported trade value is young assets, picks, right? You look at the 3 teams in the NBA that don't have any picks to trade. That includes the 2 LA teams. So to put their name among the top that might be in the running or the front running for Kyle Lowry is absurd to me. Who would we get in return? It's not Anthony Davis. It's not LeBron James. What do we want back? Schroeder on the final year of his contract, KCB, who's never been really much of anything in the NBA, an old Marcus Gasol, a Jared Dudley. Like, how low do we have to go in their deep bench before you start making a trade partner for Kyle Lowry? Because you know you're not getting any of their good players.
Ryker, I before I say anything, we brought up the shirts. I'm playing that segment. It's Walmart Woj. That's who it is. That's who it's been the past couple days because you got
these reports suck.
I got the shirt because that is just absurd. You brought up potential names that could be in this deal, and they're ugly. I've seen one report. The one I've liked most is the one I've liked most. Got the animations going everywhere, but I've seen KCP. Right, he had a good finals, but he's been trashed this year. We have Montrezl Harrell, a guy the Raptors have been rumored for a while, so he would fill a little bit of a hole in the big man position. And then Taylor Horton-Tucker, a guy that in the preseason had like a 30-point game. I actually drafted him in our deep fantasy league with my last pick and then immediately dropped him like 2 days into the season. Picked him back up with LeBron James injured now, but he's, again, a young guy with some potential, but not the level of Harrell or Maxey. Dennis Schroeder's been a name that's involved, but if you're giving up Lowry, why would you bring in a Dennis Schroeder character? So, Ryker, if we got a package of a combination of 4 of those, I don't know if the money's matched. I don't want to look into this too deeply, as you said. Yeah. Even though Woj is one of the most credible reporters.
Would you accept Trez and Kyle Kuzma? Because to me, if you're not getting any picks in the deal, then you would look at their bigs. But they have a big issue with the bigs. Obviously, Anthony Davis being out with injury. Yeah. They were trying to move Marcus Gasol. They're reported to be in the buyout market for Andre Drummond, so they're not going to look to move 2 of their power forwards. This one's a hard pass for me, Ben, with the Lakers.
Yeah, and as you said, Woj, he's a credible reporter, so that's why we're talking about it, and he's the biggest name and all these sorts of things. And maybe they've inquired, and it's just getting played up to a certain extent, but if the Raptors do end up making a trade there, I brought up those names, and then I wanted to hit you with the Kyle Kuzma question mark, because some people think Kyle Kuzma's the second coming of a stretch big man coming out and it's going to take over the league one day. Then other people call him a guy that should be waived by the LA Lakers. So I'm sort of in the middle to bottom and the impression of Kuzma. I don't know what your thoughts are, but if we had Kuzma attached to Horton-Tucker, who has some potential, and maybe, obviously, you probably wouldn't get Harrell if you're getting Kuzma, and then maybe a KCP. Would that entice you at all, or are you still no big no to this.
Harold Kuz I'd consider, because you're doing a lot for that 4-5 position. You have a guy in Kuzma that doesn't get a lot of points per game, about 12.1, but he shoots 37% from three. Now, this is by far his best season, and he has the benefit of playing with LeBron. Now, you bring him into Toronto where there's nobody that commands that attention. It's going to be a lot harder for him to get those shots up. So again, I'm still saying hard pass on trade partner with the Lakers, especially when there's other teams, Philadelphia, Miami, they can get a lot closer to giving you young guys, picks, all the things that would take to actually move this franchise in a more positive direction with the core unit that is Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, maybe or maybe not Norman Powell, and OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I don't know if we have to dive into this Lakers thing much longer, as if it happens, not only us will be talking about it, the whole world will be talking about that for the next month. We don't think it's going to happen, so we're just going to pass it there. But there is some more reasonable reports that have come out from WOJ as well, from different people, and that's that the Portland Trailblazers, they have been really interested in Norman Powell, along with a myriad of other teams. Norman Powell, so the Blazers are the big name we'll dive into first, but then Woj further said that there's been so many offers, there's such a wide market for Norman Powell, that the Raptors would have their pick of the type of deal they'd want in return, whether it's a win now and push, because I think it was the Aaron Baines, unofficial Aaron Baines fan club. This is where I saw the stat. It might have been going around other places, but I think we're within 4 games of the fifth or fourth seed in the Eastern Conference, which again would put you in a great position in the playoffs. And then we're also about 4 and 5 games to the bottom of the conference. So we are right in the middle.
I will fact check.
Yeah, fact check that. That's where I saw it. But that's a really interesting place to be. And then obviously a Lowry deal would determine what direction you want to go in regards to something like that. But Ryker, does a Norman Powell trade to the Blazers entice you? Or I'll list out the other teams. We'll talk about the Blazers first up.
Yeah, 5 games from 4th, 4.5 games from last. Yep. That is crazy. Yep. You know what? This league is frustrating because you're losing to historically bad teams, but it's also nice. Take a step back, a bit of perspective. There's more parity, right? Yep. The entire East kind of sucks, but it means any team could win on any given night. Now, my thoughts on the Portland Trailblazers are, for Norman Powell. All right, again, Norman Powell, 45% from 3, the best player on the Toronto Raptors, consistent 20-point per game, slasher, one of the only guys that's confident to score in the paint. More so than Pascal Siakam, right? He's still relatively young. You look at guys that could fit that mold on the Portland Trailblazers, and there aren't any. There just aren't. Maybe Nurkic, but he, for people that have an issue with us suggesting a Kristaps Porzingis trade, you're going to strike even more opposition to Jusuf Nurkic, obviously, with his injury history and, his relative star power in the NBA. They have young guys. They have a ton of young guys. Derek Jones Jr., who's long and athletic. Gary Trent Jr., who is a bit of a splasher, a bit of a three-point guy, and he's got some good run this season. But I look at their roster. There's nobody that I want, Ben, for that price range. The only 2 guys on that team that are good is Lillard and CJ McCollum. Yeah,
and you bring up a lot of interesting points there. I think there are some guys, obviously we haven't dove into the trade machine or anything like that, but Nurkic, I think, with his injuries and the fact that they have Enes Kanter and they probably would want to make another move, he'd be an interesting guy to have back, as this season, obviously, he's had injuries, and he seems to have injuries every year. So, as you mentioned with the Kristaps Porzingis analogy, it's people are a bit skeptical on that, but he does have a high ceiling, so I'd be happy with that potentially. And then maybe getting a couple of those young guys, as you said, Anthony Simons, Gary Trent Jr. is a shooter. They might want to keep him if they're bringing Norman Powell, because they traded a pick to get Robert Covington this year. So I believe they're getting Norman Powell. They're making a push because they're in the middle, smack dab middle of the Western Conference. They think this is a year they can really maximize this team. They have a few wing defenders in Norman Powell, so they'd want to give up their younger guys. But maybe you get Trent. But the one interesting thing about these guys when compared to, I don't know, an LA Lakers that we brought up earlier, or one of these other teams, they do have most of their future picks, from my understanding. They traded their future one in last draft in the Robert Covington trade. I'm not sure. I believe that's this upcoming draft pick, maybe next year's, but I'm sure they'd have a few more to give up. So if we, say, got 2 firsts, a couple seconds, Nurk, and a young guy, Ryker, would you be interested in that return for Norman Powell?
Nurkic, and a young guy. So Harry Giles, Anthony Simons, one of those type players.
Yep.
For Norm, I just don't see that it's worth it because I want picks for Kyle Lowry, right? Because Kyle Lowry is at the cusp of his career. He's at the tail end of the twilight of his career, right? He's probably not going to resign. Norman Powell is there right now, and he's going to be there for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So to say I'm going to trade away for future picks for Nurkic, who may or may not be healthy for one full season in his entire career, he might never stretch together a healthy season. That doesn't seem worth it to me, Ben.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but like I agree that it's underwhelming because you think of Norman Powell, shooters get paid, and Norman Powell is not just a shooter, but he is considered surely a shooter in today's NBA, shooting 45% from three on a very high volume. But he's also a slasher. He's also a win now guy. I get the contract thing. I get this, that. But if Lowry's commanding the potential for Tyler Hero, Norman Powell should be commanding more. So that's where my perspective would be. I'm not against getting first round picks for him because you're assuming the Lowry and Norm trades, they're happening all as one. So wherever they come from, I don't mind seeing it. Obviously, you want some young guys. You want some guys that are decent for next season and then some future mobility and stuff. But that's my take on the Norman Powell situation. I wouldn't be devastated with that sort of return, especially if it's Harry Giles. I'm a big fan of his game. Another guy that's dealt with injuries in his career, but has a lot of potential, is a passing big man, has some potential there. But I wouldn't be devastated if a deal like that occurred, but I think we can get more, and Woj alluded to it, that there's so many teams interested that we can have our pick of the litter with Norman Powell deal. I'm sure that's probably what all the behind-the-scenes stuff is right now. Masai dealing with these dozen or so teams, figuring out what you can get from each player, putting them up against each other. But Riker, we did have a report a couple days ago, and I assume it's only furthered by Woj today saying all these lists, but we had a list of teams that were interested in Norman Powell. I'm going to restate them. I believe we said them on the podcast once, but didn't dive into them too much as it gets a bit skeptical when it's not Shams or Woj. But the Nets, the Mavericks, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Timberwolves are all interested in acquiring Norman Powell. So out of that list of teams, does any package, any specific team really jump out at you in terms of a potential Norman Powell deal?
Yeah, because Lowry's as good as gone from what they're saying. Norman Powell, if you're able to go either way, can we both agree we don't want to trade him to be win now? The Raptors aren't win now. We have to start looking more long term for the Toronto Raptors.
Me personally, so from what I've heard it's the opposite. The Raptors might end up keeping Kyle Lowry if he wants to stay. We're just sort of appeasing Kyle Lowry at this point right now, which I don't know if is the best strategy. I think we move on from Lowry. That's my opinion with everything that's gone on. I'd like to keep Norman Powell for the future because clearly he's a beast. He's a guy that fits our core timeline. I don't really understand why we're trading him right now. But Woj even came out and said, I posted on TikTok, shout out the people on TikTok. We've quadrupled our followers on TikTok today. So, one of our vids got like 60,000 views or something on it at this point for TikTok. So shout out the TikTokers. We'll get a little dance here for everyone. But I shout out there. But Norman Powell, according to Woj, it's not whether or not will he be dealt. That's not the question around Norman Powell's future at this point. It's where he will go. So when Woj is saying that, I think he's the guy that's surely going to be traded and then Lowry's not. I think if I was Masai Ujiri, I'd have it flipped. But that's the situation right there.
I'm so ridiculously unimpressed by that comment,
Yeah.
Ben. Not from you, but just that is supposedly the rumor right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense with his age, with what he's able to provide for this team. If you trade him away, where are you getting that scoring, that playmaking from? Because Fred VanVleet, he struggles with consistency. He doesn't have the size to be an inside scorer consistently either, and his three-point shooting, it's just not there yet, right? Pascal Siakam, he's yet to feel comfortable in his role as the number one option, and he shies away against bigger defenders, right? So if you give away the guy who can score for a big, now you have the 2 and the 3 spot, which can't create because OG's also not there, right? So you need to look long term. It doesn't make sense to trade Norman Powell unless it's Norman Powell and Kyle Lowry separately for a lot of assets, or together for something huge like Karl Anthony Towns, who I'm trying to wish into existence because I think that would be a perfect fit for the Toronto Raptors timeline wise, and for patching up some of our glaring offensive deficiencies and defensive, but I don't know. It's disappointing to hear that Norman Powell is, it's just where he's going to end up. I don't
All
like that
these
because I don't think
takes,
that there's.
they got me
Yeah.
saying Walmart Woj. That's
Dude, they got me saying Walmart hat, Walmart shirt. It's just that's bad reporting, Ben. That's bad reporting.
It could be fine reporting. It just sucks. It's just tough to see as a Raptors fan. But from that list of teams, Riker, before we send it off, anything specifically, the T-Wolves obviously getting Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know. The Knicks, they're a team that I might be interested in. Didn't really think about it the first time we had our Norman Powell trade situation video, but is there any way we could finesse RJ Barrett?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. RJ
Yeah.
Barrett. Would you hate some sort of 1-for-1 with RJ Barrett?
Oh, I'd love that. That would be,
Yeah.
because he's younger, he fits the OG timeline a lot better. His potential is just through the roof. He's a guy.
Canadian.
He's a Canadian. He embraces the city. He loves playing for Team Canada. I played against him at Nationals in a tournament. You saw him in a bathroom, Riker. Maybe one day we get him on a podcast. So I'd love to see RJ Barrett brought back. I think we'd have to give up more assets. And honestly, I'd be willing to give up Norm and our young guy, like a TD, a Matt Thomas, like some other additional pieces to get Barrett. I don't know if that's a hot take because he did have a disappointing rookie season, but I'd be all in on getting Barrett.
Now, this is what I will say to conclude, and then, obviously you give your rebuttal to it, because I think you're still taking a step down if you trade Norman Powell for RJ Barrett.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an immediate step down, but you're saying this is a retooling. Okay. Yeah. So now you have a guy who plays the 2-3 position. So if you can have OG at the 4 or at the 3, right? RJ at the 2 or at the 3. He does have that kind of potential, right? Yeah. Now, what else do? You do not package Kyle and Norm together to the Knicks. I don't think that the Knicks want Kyle anyways, but now you are comfortable to say, I'll take Duncan Robinson, or I won't even I'll take Kendrick Nunn and Precious Achiuwa plus 2 picks, because now I've solved my center deficiency. I have 2 first-round picks and the prospect to build this team, and I have RJ Barrett at the 2, and I can just run with Van Vliet, OG, and Pascal Siakam. So you trade them separately. You make sure you get Precious Achiuwa in a trade, and your team doesn't look too bad 2 years from now.
Well, Riker, the Miami Heat have already offered Nunn, Robinson, Achiuwa, and this is another thing we posted on Instagram. I don't know if we said it on YouTube, but Nunn, Robinson, Precious, and Kelly Olynyk. And I don't know if there's any picks attached to that, but I'd like
You'd need the picks.
Yeah,
you'd need the picks.
I guess you'd have to get the picks. I think the Heat have struggled with draft compensation or something at this point. I saw someone report that, so maybe they don't have all the pieces, the picks necessary. But I'd still like to get the maximal return for Kyle Lowry, regardless of what Norman Powell does. Because if we're trading these 2 core pieces to this team, we need a haul. We need all of the juice. And as deflating and as annoying and horrific it would feel to do nothing this trade deadline, I'd still rather do nothing and re-sign these guys in the future if it means underselling them, right? You don't want to trade down in value if you can just keep what you got. But again, we got to make a move at this point. We should get the maximal return for it.
Here's the thing: if you re-sign Kyle Lowry for $10 million, say mid-market, right? All of a sudden, you could trade him a lot easier next year.
He wants a 2-year, $50 million extension from any team he plays for.
Yeah, but you're not.
That's $25 million a year.
I just don't see the point. If you signed him mid-market, you could trade it. You could flip him next year because he'd still obviously provide the same value for a championship contending team. I say trade him now. He's the guy that makes sense. Trade him now. And if an RJ Barrett straight up deal for Norman Powell is there, and you get Precious Achiuwa back for Kyle Lowry, you have a good team. You have a team you can build around. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's the big thing too. I don't know if we've reported that either, but Kyle Lowry, for whatever team he goes to, he wants $25 million per year for the next 2 years. So that's the assumption that's going to go on. The Raptors, in our opinion, should not give him that. That's a lot of money for an aging point guard that's not on a current championship roster. So that is what it is. We've dove into a lot here. You guys are the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, the RaptorsDigest.ca, and especially the TikTok today, because the TikTok is popping off. Join the bandwagon at Raptors Digest on TikTok. Don't join the other one because we have this. The merch, let us know if you like the style of the merch that Rikers has underneath his hand right there. But you have any last words, Riker?
Hand on my chest.
And
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
yo, that gold logo is crispy.
It is clean.
Yeah, it's crispy.